Hi everyone, and welcome to our 8th lesson in our Poetry GCSE revisions or study guide series. If you haven't seen this series so far, we're going through everything that you need to know to write better poetry essays in your GCSEs, whether we're talking about the anthology poetry books that you have been studying, or the unseen poetry, or obviously both. So regardless of whichever exam board you're on, hopefully something in here would be very helpful for you. Over the last 7 weeks, we've gone through structure, language, rhythm and rhyme. We've gone through themes and motifs. I've done 2 time-pressured poetry plans for you. We did a comparative model answer last week where I went through a model answer of a comparative poetry essay, obviously comparing 2 poems. Today, we're going to go through more of an unseen / one poem close analysis question. What we're going to be going through today's lesson. So yeah, we're just going to dive straight in and get started really. So this is a model essay that actually I found on Reddit. This isn't one of my students that wrote this. There are going to be potentially a few mistakes in it, and it was literally typed into Reddit. So I'll give my thoughts on what I think went well with this, what I think maybe could be improved in this, and ultimately how I think we could try and boost it up towards a level 9. Yeah. So we're going to treat it as an unseen essay. We're going to treat it as really like the AQA 24 mark question. All of the other exam boards have similar questions. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments about what I say on here, please leave those comments down below. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up. Other than that, we're just going to dive straight in and talk about what they have said. So in the poem On Aging, the poet presents a sense of defiance from the speaker, suggesting, well, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, we probably should at least quickly look at the poem On Aging, or the problem is I know the poem quite well. So actually, let's just read it and see if we can understand what they have said based on their quotes and everything without having to read the poem. Because the truth is a good unseen poetry essay should read in a way that even if you haven't read the poem as an examiner or the person marking it, you should still understand the ideas in the poem. So let's see if we can get away with not reading actually. So yeah, sense of defiance. So first small thing, On Aging should be in capital letters because it's a title. It is a relatively small thing, but it's still an important one. The poet presents. Now, there's nothing wrong with calling the poet, but you might also consider calling the poet by their name as well, or their last name, their surname, suggesting she wants to continue to be an independent person and not let the fact that she is getting older slow her down and stop her from living life. So straight away, we've got a little intro here, which is okay, but my advice to you is at GCSE, I don't recommend introductions. There's nothing in the mark scheme that says that you need an introduction. There's nothing in the mark scheme that says you need one. So I just don't think that it's necessary. And it doesn't really add too much to the assessment objectives. Mostly what you're trying to do is come up with good points that answer the question. In this case, it's about like how the speaker is presented effectively. So it's kind of done that. It's said about defiance. So that's a little bit of what we call AO1, but obviously in the intro, there's no analysis either. So yeah, I would say that probably the intro isn't doing you a huge amount of favors. That's my opinion on it. And well, it's not really an opinion. It's what the mark scheme says as well. So I would just dive straight into these main paragraphs. And this is where I would really dive into some quotes and some structure and things like that. So we start from the beginning of the poem with the speaker describing themselves like a sack left on the shelf. Okay, good use of quote. The use of a simile, great understanding that there's a technique in here, demonstrates that the speaker knows about how their aging could convince people to see them as less of a person. And this is further emphasized in the very first line when the speaker is sitting quietly. Okay, great. So there's a lot of positives in this bit. So we've got the fact that we've got a simile, which is explained to some extent. You could dive deeper into the explanation for sure. So to see them as less of a person, and this is further emphasis, so less of a person, the word because is your best friend when it comes to analysis. So why is it that being like a sack left on a shelf, they seem to be less of a person? Because the image dehumanizes them, obviously, but also a sack of a sack is lifeless, and so this also creates a sense of a lack of movement, which is more typical in the elderly. I'm not trying to stereotype here, but obviously as you age, mobility does start to become more difficult. Then we have this supporting quote. This is further emphasized in the first line, sitting quietly. Good. So we're not going to change it to American English, even though I do live in America. But obviously I'm British, you can tell by the accent. But yeah, so just going a bit deeper into the analysis would be really helpful here. The use of a little secondary quote here to help support your main quote is brilliant. We quickly break from the description of the speaker as weak and frail, as they state that they don't, apostrophe, think they need your chattering. The declarative juxtaposes earlier on in the text when the speaker was describing themselves as vulnerable, demonstrating that the speaker believes that they should not be held back in their age. Cool. Yeah, that's a nice development on, and it continues the discussion. The one thing then, the final thing I would say in this paragraph is I would get rid of the intro, and I would just say, one of the ways which the poet presents the speaker is as defiant. Through their defiance or their defiant tone or something like that. It's always good to talk about tone if you can. Not deviant, defiant. So now it's really solid, because you want to point at the start of each paragraph, ideally, that you then sort of link your evidence to, right? So everything in this paragraph really builds to this idea of some defiance. So yes, they're a bit older. Yes, they're like a sack on the shelf, but no, they don't like this. They actually want to break that stereotype of, as you age, being less useful or being less mobile. Later in the poem, the speaker states, "Hold, stop, don't pity me." Yes. Again, further demonstrating the speaker's stubborn desire to be seen like everyone else. Now, there's nothing wrong with the way that they've done this. I would probably just, for formatting, I would just put another way that the poem presents the speaker is through stubbornness. Then I would do the quote, "Hold, stop, don't pity me." The use of listing suggests that the speaker is in control. However, it could also imply the speaker is actually trying to clutch onto the last bit of power they have, as they know they're growing older and hence are trying to defy the cycle of life, almost like a child defying their elders. Good, that's really perceptive, symbolizing their overall feeling that aging deprives you of your rights as a human being. This isn't bad. I think that what I would want is a little bit more analysis again. So you've talked about the use of listing, which is fine, but you could also talk about the exclamatory sentences. So when you say almost like a child defying their elders, which the defiance and childlike nature could particularly be shown through the exclamatories in the sentence. Overall, the reader feels pathos for, sorry, my camera just went off there for a second. Just need to fix that for us. Overall, the reader feels pathos for the speaker, as this part of the poem symbolizes that the speaker's overall feeling that aging deprives you of your rights as a human being. Yeah. So we've added a bit of a point at the start, which I think is always good to start every paragraph. We've gone a little bit deeper into the analysis. And then we've added some reader response. I think it's really good to include a little bit of reader response. And we haven't done reader response on this first one really, which is okay. You don't have to do it in every paragraph, but it's good to have some reader response and thinking about that. That helps you with your points and your ideas and your analysis. We can see more of this again when the speaker seems to begin to worry about the possible consequences of growing older as their bones get stiff and aching. We see this once more that the speaker is beginning to realize that they're eventually going to grow old and eventually die, painting a bigger picture, and through the use of adjectives that the speaker feels that aging is a curse to them and brings them nothing but sadness and despair. Now, this is not a separate paragraph. This belongs in this paragraph. So that's now a more developed paragraph, all ultimately over the stubborn desire to be seen like everybody else and to deny aging. That's the one extra thing. Sometimes you might want to add in like a little bit more to your point as your ideas develop and as your evidences, as you analyze your evidences. So now it's not just the stubbornness, it's also denial or stubbornness not to age too. The use of a slow vowel sound, for example, slow and hold, suggests that all the vowels, as the vowels are longer, it symbolizes the effects that aging is having on the speaker as they're slowing down, as humans naturally do as they get older. Yeah, it symbolizes. Throughout the poem, the speaker constantly contradicts themselves as they emphasize that they want to retain the freedom while also describing the ways in which aging has affected them. And we can see this when using an exclamative, otherwise I'll do without it. Capital I, I'll do without it. And then in the next line, describing how their legs are stiff and aching, highlighting the duality of aging and how the speaker feels that aging is restrictive, but also allows you to explore yourself and your body. So the only problem with this one is it's not really giving necessarily a clear point. I think that the point is in the middle again. So throughout the poem, the speaker constantly contradicts themselves and they emphasize that they want to retain the freedom while also describing the ways in which aging has affected them. So I suppose you would say that this paragraph is sort of the paradoxical nature of the speaker, because on the one hand, they want the freedom. On the other hand, they understand aging is slowing them down a bit. But there's a certain resilience to that, I suppose. That paragraph would need a bit of work. I think that it's probably outside of what I can do within the time of this video. But again, I would just advise you always to have a clear point at the beginning that you then use your evidence to support, and if possible, a little bit of reader response. Final bit, at the end of the poem, the speaker remarks how they are lucky they can still breathe in, suggesting the speaker has realized that aging is not a curse and that we should try to break free not a curse that we should try to break free from, but actually a blessing as it teaches her how to slow down and take in every aspect of life compared to the start of the poem where she's going at fast pace. Okay, cool. So I think that the piece is good. I think it probably would have got about a level 7 in the way that it was. By adding in deeper analysis, we're going a bit further. So here's my wrap up, I suppose. Start every paragraph with a point. Yeah, he or she, I think it was a female person who posted this, but anyway, they have not started every paragraph with a clear point that answers the question. We've added some of those in. We could add more in if we needed to, obviously, in this paragraph. What I am actually sensing is that this bit, this conclusion, you don't need a conclusion any more than you need an intro, really sort of belongs more at the beginning of this as a paragraph. And then the use of the slow vowel sounds and stuff actually helps to show she's accepting her aging. Maybe there is a little bit of contradiction in there, but I have to say, I don't think Maya Angelou's poem, Maya Angelou is the name of this poet, I don't think that really she is saying that she's contradicting. I think that she understands she's aging, but she still just wants dignity, respect, and freedom as she ages. She doesn't want to be treated differently. So I'm not sure there's much of a contradiction there in reality. Anyway, so start every paragraph with a clear point that answers the question. Analyze your quotes deeply and try to include some reader response. If you do all of those things, then you should at least get a level 7. Now, what could this candidate do to really boost this up to a level 9? When they're talking about the slowing down of everything, what I would do is I would actually bring in some structure. So fast pace equals longer sentences and less punctuation. And obviously slow pace is the opposite. So if you're talking about how over the course of the poem, the speaker slows down, what you want to do is look towards the beginning of the poem and look for that faster pace, longer sentences, less punctuation, maybe on jambomon, right? On jambomon. And then towards the end of the poem, if you feel that the pace is slowing down, and this is part of the acceptance, identify some shorter sentences, maybe places where there are either more punctuation or heavier punctuation, like hyphens and ellipsis and semicolons, which is much slower punctuation. It's heavier punctuation. And maybe some caesura, right? Caesura obviously slows down poetry. So we need to get some structure in here. I think that's the major thing that would hold this back from a level 9. But as I said, I think that as it stands, it's definitely a level 7 at least, especially with some of the edits we've made. That really helps. So that is what I would recommend to you, whoever you are who did this. I will actually post this on Reddit to see if I get any comment back from the student who posted this, or just if it just helps other Redditors, really, that would be fine by me. So hopefully you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on how to boost your poetry or any other part of the exam, feel free to add in some comments or questions or whatever down below in the video as well. So yeah, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Awesome. Take care.